real stories of werewolves, of Dogman history, from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
Dogman with a shoulder bag. Dear Scary Stories NYC, the first time I saw a dogman, I was 14, gangly and awkward in my dark hoodie that smelled perpetually of wood smoke. My mom and I were gathering kindling near the edge of our property where the trees grew thicker, casting long shadows across the forest floor. It was late autumn and the woods had that hollow feeling they get when the leaves are mostly gone and the air turns sharp with the promise of winter. We heard him before we saw him, a soft rustling that didn't match the rhythm of the breeze through the branches. Mom straightened up, her yellow jacket bright against the muted forest backdrop, her dark hair falling across her shoulders as she turned toward the sound. "Stay still," she whispered, her hand finding my wrist. I felt her fingers tighten as the rustling grew louder. Then he emerged between two ancient oaks. The Dogman. He stood upright like a man, but was nothing like any man I'd ever seen. Massive, at least 7 feet tall, covered in thick dark fur that rippled with muscle underneath. His face was a perfect nightmare, a wolf's head with a long snout and teeth that gleamed when his lips pulled back, revealing a hint of fangs. But it was his eyes that haunted me most, amber and intelligent, taking us in with an awareness that felt impossible. What struck me even more than his appearance was what hung from his shoulder, a tattered bag, like an old mailman's satchel, patched in places and worn at the edges. It hung against his fur, so profoundly out of place that for a moment I wondered if I was dreaming. Mom's grip tightened further. "That's no ordinary animal," she breathed, barely audible. "Animals don't carry bags." The dogman's ears twitched at her words, though we were surely too far away to be heard. He held our gaze for what felt like eternity, his massive form silhouetted against the dying light, before turning deliberately and disappearing back into the trees, the strange bag bouncing against his side. When we were certain he was gone, Mom released my wrist and rubbed her own hands together nervously. "That's a man," she said with surprising certainty. "Or it used to be one. Maybe some kind of a wizard who could move between shapes." "A wizard?" I asked, my voice cracking. She nodded, gathering her kindling with methodical movements that betrayed her rattled nerves. "There are stories. Old stories about men who can wear animal skins and take their form." She shrugged. "I don't know the proper words for it, but that thing. He is carrying a bag. Animals don't make bags and they sure don't carry them." Well, I couldn't really argue with her logic, although the idea of a man beneath that fur seemed impossible. The memory of those eyes, though, there had been something in them, something that understood us, that watched us, that sort of measured us. "What do you think he keeps in there?" I asked as we hurried back to our cabin, both of us glancing over our shoulders every few steps. Mom shook her head. "Nothing good. Nothing good at all." Me and my mom were poor, but we weren't the kind of poor that starves. That's important to understand. Dad had built our cabin before I was born, and before his heart gave out when I was 10. It sat in a small clearing beside a stream that never ran dry, with a garden plot that Mom tended like it was sacred ground. We had what we needed, just not much else. "We're rich in what matters," Mom would say, stirring a pot of venison stew or checking the jars of preserves that lined our root cellar shelves. And she was right. We had food. Plenty of it, actually. The local hunters would drop off deer during season, more meat than they could use. Farmers would bring us their extras, chickens that laid less frequently, the odd pig that wasn't quite market ready. We never asked for these things, but people looked out for the widow and her son. Our freezer was always well stocked, and Mom had learned from her mother how to make everything last. She could smoke meat that would keep for months, canned vegetables that tasted garden fresh in the dead of winter, and baked bread that filled our small cabin with a warmth that went beyond temperature. I helped where I could, splitting wood, maintaining Dad's old truck that still ran when we needed it, learning to hunt small game with his rifle. We survived, and most days we did more than that. After that first sighting, the Dogman became a quiet presence in our lives. We'd catch glimpses of him moving through the trees at dusk. Once I saw him drinking from our stream, massive hands cupped to bring water to his muzzle, that strange bag always hanging from his shoulder. "I've been thinking about him," Mom said one night as we sat by the fire, the window's dark mirrors reflecting our faces back at us. "If he's a man wearing the skin of a beast, there are stories about such things." "Like werewolves?" I asked, remembering horror movies I'd glimpsed at friends' houses. She shook her head. "Not quite. More like people who can step between worlds. There's power in that." "How do you know about this stuff?" I asked, genuinely curious. Mom had never been one for ghost stories or superstition. "Well, my grandmother mentioned things sometimes. She wasn't from around here." Mom's eyes grew distant. "She talked about men who could wear animals, and animals who could wear men." I never paid much attention. I thought they were just old country tales. She glanced toward the window. "Now I'm not so sure." I followed her gaze into the darkness beyond our cabin. "What do you think he wants?" "To be left alone, probably," she replied. "That is what most creatures want." But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to it, that the Dogman was watching us specifically. I'd catch movement at the edge of our property when I was doing chores, sent eyes on me when I walked to our mailbox at the end of our long dirt drive, and always carrying that bag. What did he carry in it? What was so important that he never set it down? Mom developed her theories, spitting them out on quiet evenings. Maybe it holds his human clothes, she'd suggest. Or perhaps it's full of treasures he's collected over the years. Once, she even wondered if it might contain human souls. I laughed at that one, but her eyes remained serious. "Magic needs vessels," was all she said in response to my skepticism. I didn't believe in magic then. I was 14, caught between childhood and whatever came next, too old for fairy tales, but young enough to feel a chill when branches scratched against our roof at night. But I believed in the Dogman. I'd seen him with my own eyes. And sometimes, when the moon was full, when the forest seemed to breathe around our little cabin, I'd wonder if he was watching us from just beyond the reach of our porch light, that mysterious bag swinging gently against his fur. The men arrived on a Tuesday in early October, when the trees were aflame with color and the air smelled of wood smoke and impending frost. Their truck was too clean for our rutted dirt road, a gleaming black behemoth that growled to a stop in front of our cabin and disgorged 3 men in clothes that cost more than our monthly expenses. The leader, tall man with a silver watch that caught the sunlight, rapped on our door with knuckles that had never split wood or tilled soil. When Mom answered, he called her by name, his smile not reaching his eyes. He gave her his name and said these are his associates. Mom wiped her hands on her apron, flour from the morning's baking still dusting her forearms. "How can I help you, gentlemen?" "We're the new owners of this parcel," the man said, producing a folder of documents. "There seems to be some confusion about the property lines. According to our records, your cabin sits on land that now belongs to Northern Pine Development." Mom's spine straightened, though she barely reached the man's shoulder. "There must be some mistake. My husband built this house. We've been here for 20 years. The second man, shorter but broader, stepped forward. "No mistake, ma'am. The previous owner sold us 1,000 acres, including this plot." He gestured vaguely at our home, our garden, the forest beyond. "We're happy to work out a rental arrangement considering your situation." I watched from the doorway to the kitchen, my hands balling into fists at my sides. Mom's face had gone pale, but her voice remained steady. "My husband and I purchased this land outright. I have the deed in my strongbox." The man's smile thinned. "Boundaries get redrawn. Surveys get updated. We've got the latest paperwork signed by the county assessor himself." He named a monetary figure, a monthly rent that might as well have been $1 million for all we could afford. "We can't pay that," Mom said softly, "and we shouldn't have to. This is our home." The third man, silent until now, cleared his throat. "First of the month. Cash or certified check. Otherwise." They left a business card with Mom before driving away, the truck's tires spraying gravel that pinged against our porch steps. Mom stood in the doorway long after they'd gone, watching the dust settle on the road. "They're lying," she finally said, her voice so low I almost didn't hear it. "Your father would never have built on someone else's land, never." I nodded, though doubts had already begun to gnaw at my certainty. "Well, what do we do?" She closed the door and leaned against it, suddenly looking older than she was. "I don't know. I truly don't know." That night, as I watched Mom frying chicken for dinner, her hands moving on autopilot while her mind clearly wrestled with our predicament, she suddenly froze, spatula mid-turn, her gaze fixed on our kitchen window. She whispered at me and said, "Look." Through the glass, just at the edge of where our porch light reached, I caught a glimpse of those amber eyes, reflecting in the darkness, there and gone in an instant. The Dogman. Mom's expression shifted from worry to something I'd never seen before. Determination mixed with a wild sort of hope. "Get the good plates," she said, turning the heat off under the skillet. "China ones from the hutch." I didn't question her. The look in her eyes brooked no argument. Half an hour later, we stood at the edge of our clearing, the night pressing in around us. On Mom's best plate sat 4 pieces of golden fried chicken, still steaming in the cool evening air. Mom held it before her like an offering. "We know you're there," she called, her voice steady despite the absurdity of what we were doing. "We've seen you. We need your help." The forest remained silent, except for the whisper of wind through nearly bare branches. "Please," Mom continued. "Some men came today. Bad men who want to take away our home. We have nowhere else to go." I was about to suggest we go back inside before we caught our deaths in the October chill, when a twig snapped to our right, and then another, deliberate, approaching. He emerged from between 2 massive oaks exactly as I remembered, imposing in height, dark fur rippling over muscle, those intelligent amber eyes, and the incongruous shoulder bag hanging against his side. In the dark, he looked even more monstrous, yet somehow less frightening than the men who had stood on our porch that afternoon. Mom's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained firm. "We're offering you food. Good food. In exchange for protection." The last word came out uncertain, as if she wasn't sure it was the right term for what we needed. The Dogman approached slowly, those amber eyes flicking between us and the plate of chicken. When he was close enough that I could smell his wild, earthy scent, like forest floor and running water and something indefinably ancient, he extended one massive paw hand toward the plate. Mom did not flinch, as those clawed fingers carefully took the plate from her. The Dogman studied the chicken for a long moment. Then, instead of eating it as I'd expected, he opened his shoulder bag and he deposited the food inside. Handing my mother back the plate, and without a sound, he turned and disappeared back into the forest, leaving us standing there in the darkness, unsure if we just made a deal with a guardian spirit, or merely fed a strange creature who happened to live in our woods. "Come on," Mom said finally, putting her arm around my shoulders. "It is getting cold out here." As we walked back to the cabin, I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see those amber eyes watching us from the tree line. The forest remained dark and still, though, keeping its secrets. The minutes after the Dogman disappeared into the trees with our chicken stretched into hours. Those hours stretched into days, days into weeks, and the waiting nearly broke us both. "Do you think he understood what you asked?" I whispered one night, the fire crackling and throwing shadows across Mom's face as she darned a sock with methodical precision. "Well, that Dogman understood something," she replied, not looking up from her work. The needle flashed in the firelight, a tiny silver fish swimming through wool. Those weren't animal eyes, Jimmy. There was knowing in them. I wanted to believe her. I sort of needed to believe her. Every strange noise in the night had me bolt upright in bed. Was it those men returning? Or was it our unlikely guardian? The distinction mattered more than anything. Each morning I checked the perimeter of our property before starting chores, looking for footprints, disturbed earth, anything that might tell me the Dogman was keeping watch, or that the men had returned. Sometimes I'd find strange impressions in the soft ground near the stream, massive paw prints that seemed to walk the boundary of our land, but they could have been there all along, and maybe my frightened mind was just then noticing them. When the deadline the men had given us came and went, Mom and I sat up all night with Dad's shotgun across her lap. Neither of us slept. The wind moaned around the eaves of our cabin, and every creak of the old timber frame had us flinching. But dawn broke clear and quiet, with no signs of visitors, welcome or otherwise. A week passed, then another. Maybe they were just trying to scare us, I offered as we dug potatoes from our garden plot. Mom shook her head, wiping sweat from her brow at the back of her hand. Men like that don't make empty threats. I still expect them to come back. But as the calendar pages turned and a full month slipped away, something shifted in our understanding. Those men were not coming back. We didn't know why. Perhaps they'd found easier marks, or maybe the paperwork they claimed to have was as fraudulent as Mom suspected. Or maybe, and this thought would wake me up in the darkest part of the night, maybe something had stopped them. Something with amber eyes and teeth that gleamed in the moonlight. The two of us, we never spoke of this possibility aloud. It felt dangerous somehow, like acknowledging it might break whatever spell was protecting us. Instead, we slowly returned to our routines, although Mom took to leaving the porch light on at night. Just so we can see what's coming, she said. But I knew it was a beacon, a thank you to whatever or whoever was out there. The Dogman became less present in our conversations, though never absent from our thoughts. His bag remained a mystery, its contents unknown. But whatever debt we'd incurred by feeding him, it seemed he considered it paid in full. 5 winters passed, each one falling into spring, and then summer, and then autumn again. I grew taller than Mom, my voice deepened, and the cabin began to feel small in ways that had nothing to do with its actual size. We didn't speak of the Dogman anymore, though sometimes I'd feel a prickle at the back of my neck when I ventured deep into the woods, and I'd have a sense that I wasn't alone. Then came the winter that nearly took her from me. It started with a cough. Just a tickle, she said, nothing to fret about. But by the 3rd day, she couldn't get out of bed, her breathing ragged and wet, her forehead burning against my palm. Outside, snow piled against our windows, the wind howling like a wounded animal. The temperature had dropped so low that the trees were splitting with sounds like gunshots in the night. "I'll go get Doc Mercer," I said, pulling on my father's old coat that finally fit my shoulders. Mom clutched my wrist with fingers like ice. "The roads will be drifted over," she whispered between labored breaths. "You'll freeze before you make the highway." She was right, and we both knew it. Our nearest neighbor was 5 miles away. The doctor's office was 15 beyond that. In good weather, our old truck could make it, but in this, it would probably be suicide. I built up the fire until the cabin was stifling, melting snow for tea she couldn't keep down, and watching helplessly as her breathing grew more shallow with each passing hour. Our freezer was full of meat, our pantry stocked with preserves. We wouldn't starve, but all the venison in the world couldn't break her fever or ease the fluid filling her lungs. On the 4th night, I sat beside her bed, watching the rise and fall of her chest, each breath a battle she was slowly losing. The snow had stopped, but the moonlight reflecting off its surface cast an eerie blue glow through the windows. Without really meaning to, I found myself almost praying, but not to God, to the Dogman. I whispered the name Dogman, feeling strange on my lips after so long. I said, "Dogman, if you're out there, if you can hear me." I trailed off, feeling foolish and desperate and terrified all at once. Mom stirred, her eyes fluttering open, glassy with fever. She asked me why it was so hot. I pressed a cool cloth to her forehead. "Just rest, Mom. "Did you see him again?" she asked, her voice drifting. The man in the wolf skin." "No," I answered softly. "I haven't seen him for a long time." She nodded slightly, her eyes closing. "His bag. I wonder what he carries." As her breathing settled into an uneasy rhythm, I made my decision. We had meat, the best cuts saved for special occasions that never seemed to come. If the Dogman had helped us once, perhaps he would again. And if not, well, what else was I gonna do? I pulled on my boots, wrapped myself in layers, and selected the finest steaks from our freezer. As I stepped out into the brutal cold of that moonlit night, I knew I was chasing a fairy tale, a story we told ourselves to explain the unexplainable. But I was my mother's son, and she had taught me that sometimes belief itself is the most powerful magic of all. The beef was the finest cut we had, a ribeye gifted by the Johnsons after their son's 4-H triumph. I'd been saving it for Mom's birthday, but that celebration now felt like a distant dream. The meat was still partially frozen, ruby red, and marbled with white fat that seemed to glow in the moonlight as I trudged through knee-deep snow, my breath crystallizing before me. What was I expecting this Dogman to do? I hadn't thought that far ahead. Did I want him to cure pneumonia? Chase away illness like he'd apparently chased away those men? The rational part of my brain screamed at the absurdity, even as my feet carried me deeper into the moonlit forest. But when someone you love is slipping away, breath by ragged breath, rationality takes a back seat to hope, even hope as thin and fragile as winter ice. "I know you're out there," I called, my voice swallowed by the snow-hushed woods. "Please, it's about my mother." The silence that followed felt infinite. The cold penetrated my layers, numbing my fingers despite the thick gloves. Just as I was about to call again, I heard it, the soft crunch of weight on snow, deliberate footsteps approaching from behind. I turned slowly, and there he was, larger than my memory had preserved him. His fur was thicker, his breath steaming in the frigid air. Those amber eyes locked onto mine, holding a depth that stripped away the years, making me feel 14 again, small and vulnerable beneath that ancient gaze. "My mom is sick," I said in a voice steadier than I expected. "She helped you once with chicken." I held out the beef, still wrapped in butcher paper. "This is the best we have." For a moment, he simply stared, unmoving. Then, with startling gentleness, he extended one massive paw-like hand and took the offering. But rather than tucking it into his ever-present bag as he'd done with the chicken, he unwrapped that meat, and right before me, he scarfed it all down. His teeth tore into the beef with primal efficiency, yet there was something almost ceremonial in the way he consumed it, like a sacred ritual unfolding in the moonlight. He made sounds of appreciation, low rumbles that vibrated the air between us as he devoured every morsel, leaving nothing but the blood-stained paper drifting to the snow. When he finished, he looked at me again, and though his face couldn't form a human smile, something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of understanding, perhaps even compassion. Then, he turned and melted into the darkness, his bag swinging gently against his side. I stood alone in the clearing, wondering what had just happened. Had I completed some unknown bargain, or had I merely fed a hungry creature on a cold night? The next morning I woke to the smell of coffee, a scent so normal it took several moments to register as impossible. I found Mom at the stove, pale but upright, stirring oatmeal with shaking hands. "You should be in bed," I croaked, relief and disbelief tangling in my chest. "Fever broke before dawn," she said, her voice weak but clear. "First decent breath I've taken in days." I never told her where I'd gone that night. Some things are better left unexplained. tucked away like treasures in an old bag. She recovered slowly but completely and lived another 19 years, long enough to see me marry, to hold her grandchildren, long enough to grow old in that cabin she'd built with my father. Now I'm the old one, bones creaking like those cabin timbers. The nursing home staff think I'm a bit touched when I save portions of my dinner, but they indulge me. On nights when my arthritis allows, I shuffle to the edge of the facility's property, where the manicured lawn meets the wild forest. I leave my offerings there. Hamburger from the cafeteria, occasional steak when my daughter visits with takeout. I've never seen him again, but sometimes in the deepest part of night, when the moon casts long shadows through my window, I imagine he is still out there, making his rounds with that mysterious bag slung over his shoulder. And I wonder, as my mom did all those years ago, what treasures he carries, what payments, what memories, what magic. Maybe someday I'll find out. Maybe that's what the bag is for, after all. Maybe he collects souls he's touched, keeping them safe until it's time to carry them home.
Team Dogman for men of the world, and it also looks cute on girls. The hat says Dogman, I'm happy to meet you, but there's no guarantee that Dogman won't eat you. Team Dogman hat, it's the prescription. The link to get your own is in the description.
Out of all the others, he's our pick. Today's executive producer is Matthew Frederick. Please join me in thanking Matthew Frederick for making this episode possible. Matthew is a member of our channel through YouTube, where he gets to hear our secret uncensored stories. If you'd like to hear them too, then listen to what this next little guy has to say. Hank. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos, or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that when it cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.